Suddenly, as a scream pierces the stormy night, the ominous image of a church tower with a glowing red cross looms against the downpour. A battered man, barely conscious and racked with agony, struggled to stay upright as he coughed violently and fought to endure the overwhelming pain. An old man in a suit, his expression cold and remorseless, stands over the bloodied body of his victim, a smoking pistol in hand as the ominous aftermath of his ruthless execution hangs heavy in the air. Amidst the dark, devastated room littered with corpses, the bloodied old man stood tall with fierce, glowing eyes, his heart pounding as he surveyed the aftermath of his brutal victory. In the suffocating darkness, the frightened, injured man cried out in terror, his voice echoing his overwhelming fear and desperation. Suddenly, a desperate woman, bloodied and trembling, clutches her baby tightly while kneeling on the floor, gripping a blood-soaked sword in a frantic attempt to protect her terrified child. Seeing the woman bloodied and shaken, the old man hurried to her side and anxiously asked if she was all right, his worry clear as he tried to ensure her safety. In the dim, blood-spattered room, the panicked old man desperately asked about their child, and the resolute mother, shielding the baby with one arm and gripping her sword with the other, reassured him that their baby was safe. In the gloom, the wounded man struggled to confess that he had something urgent he needed to reveal, his desperation etched across his battered form. As the injured boy cried out in panic about his wound, the old man, determined to protect him, quickly reassured the boy that he would handle it and urged him to stay still while tending to his injury under the dim light. With her bloodied hand gently clasped in his, the gravely wounded woman shared her acceptance and contentment by telling him that, despite everything, she had no regrets because they had experienced their wedding. In the darkness, a bloodied man with glowing glasses confronted another while clutching a crying baby, his anguished voice accusing the other that they had known this would happen. A gravely injured woman, her voice trembling with desperation yet love, made her first and final plea as a wife, asking that her vulnerable newborn be given the chance to live the life he truly desired. Despite the blood and exhaustion etched across his face, the boy managed a faint, bittersweet smile as he endured the aftermath of his struggle, relief flickering in his eyes. In the cold, unforgiving light, the bloodied woman slumps forward in pain, her strength fading, while the old man grips her arm with a sinister determination, the air heavy with desperation after their violent struggle. As the desperate cries of the newborn echoed through the tense room, the masked man seized the baby from the bloodied, kneeling woman, whose exhaustion and despair filled the air with a sense of hopelessness. In the darkness, the scheming man, his red glasses glowing ominously, smirked with amusement as he mocked the idea of using a wedding as a trap. In a shadowy room, the bloodied man confronted his unseen adversaries with fury, accusing them of concocting such a twisted plan just to lure him out. In a menacing tone against the darkness, the man warned that never forgets a traitor and declared that the day his own son, Jin's heir, takes control of the group would be significant. With a bloodied face twisted into a menacing grin, the vengeful woman maliciously threatened that her enemy's son would die at the hands of her own child. In a dimly lit room framed by tall windows, the calculating man revealed his scheme, stating that once the aging chairman passed away, his own son would ascend to power and that consequences would soon follow. In the dimly lit, ominous atmosphere, the man stood resolute as he confirmed his decision with unwavering determination. With a sinister confidence, the man in the suit leveled his gun while holding a glowing mask and threatened that he would be looking forward to what came next. Beneath a bright, partly cloudy sky, the scene shifts to a calm view of a modern building exterior, establishing the tranquil setting for what is to come. Overwhelmed by the challenge, the boy shouted in exasperation that this was proving to be extremely difficult for him. As the energetic training session began outdoors, the stern mentor confidently insisted that they had only just started, while his frustrated son protested and called out to his father, overwhelmed by the demanding exercise. A distressed young boy, overwhelmed by the relentless schedule of running, squats, and swimming, protested loudly that enduring such intense training at only 8 years old felt like child abuse. Outside by the glass fence, the stern older man confronted the boy with a serious tone, demanding to know why he had been hitting his classmates, while the boy stood defensively, clearly annoyed by the questioning. The boy, visibly frustrated and emotionally hurt, defended himself by explaining that the other kids had bullied and hit someone else first, and had insulted him by calling him a kid without a mom. Outside in the bright sunlight, the stern old man defiantly justified his intent to retaliate by insisting that since they had started the conflict, it was only fair for him to strike back. Suddenly, the boy gasped in panic as a blinding force struck his forehead, leaving him frozen in utter shock. A stern man in sunglasses confronted the nervous boy against a dramatic red backdrop, firmly reminding him once again not to resort to violence as a means of revenge. A tense atmosphere settles over the room as a nervous boy listens anxiously to strict off-panel instructions warning that he must hurry and hit the mitts or risk missing dinner. Upon hearing the devastating news that there would be no dinner, the boy reacted in panic and horror, his face breaking into a desperate, wide-eyed expression. A stern-looking man with sunglasses gazed up at the sky, his expression one of displeasure as he reluctantly voiced his strong aversion to anything involving food. With a fierce intensity in his eyes, the desperate boy lunged forward, shouting hungrily that he needed food. The fierce coach shouted at the determined boy to push himself harder, driving him to deliver an even more powerful punch with his boxing gloves. With fierce focus, the determined boy delivered a powerful punch, while the man behind him cheered him on with enthusiastic encouragement. As the stern man commanded that only 4 laps remained, the exhausted boy, his desperation evident, cried out in determination while forcing himself to continue dragging the heavy tire. Outside near the sunlit building, someone yelled in frustration, their exasperation echoing through the trees. As the sun dipped behind the building, a sudden flurry of birds took to the sky, their startled flight hinting at an unseen disturbance in the calm evening. As the warm glow of sunset bathed the balcony, the hesitant boy called out to his father, who responded with calm attentiveness, marking the beginning of a heartfelt conversation between them. As the boy devours his burger with delight, the man stands contentedly beside him, holding a drink and sharing in the joyful moment. Startled by the abrupt question, the old man reacted with alarm and demanded to know why it was being asked so suddenly. A young boy, his eyes filled with curiosity and longing, wondered aloud why he and his family had no photos of their mother when all his friends played outside with theirs. The old man, his brow furrowed with concern, muttered thoughtfully to himself as he tried to assess the tense situation unfolding before him. Mourning on the bloodied ground, the older man grieved for the woman he had lost, remembering how strong, thoughtful, and intelligent she had been. As the sunset bathed the room in warm light, the old man comforted Ai by reminiscing that she had loved him deeply and was remarkably beautiful, leaving the boy visibly moved by the bittersweet memory. As the boy quietly observed while eating, the man, visibly uneasy, responded defensively that it felt as though the boy was putting particular emphasis on the word, beautiful. As the man resolutely prepared to leave for work, he announced that it was time for him to go, prompting the young boy to look up at him with concern and ask if he was working again today. While the man matter-of-factly explained that weekends brought the most customers, the boy, his face a mix of curiosity and worry, called out to ask if, now that AI could drive, his father's job as a driver was at risk. Suddenly, the man was confronted with an awkward suggestion that he should consider finding a different job, leaving him visibly uncomfortable and caught off guard. As the sun set, the man wearing sunglasses grew pensive, silently wondering with concern who the cheerful attitude he observed could have come from. With a joyful energy, the cheerful boy waved goodbye from the cozy room and warmly called out for everyone to take care. With an air of unshakable confidence, the man simply smirked in silence, his sunglasses hiding any hint of uncertainty. As the tranquil sunset bathes the modern house in warm light, someone quietly reflects that his smile closely resembles another's, a sense of nostalgia settling over the scene. With unwavering determination, the young man unleashed a series of powerful punches against the heavy bag, each strike fueled by intense focus and leaving deep marks on its surface. As the tense atmosphere settles in, the old man announces with a serious tone that the moment has arrived, while the determined young fighter steps forward, fully focused and ready to face the challenge ahead. With an approving nod, the older man evaluated the progress and instructed that they should take a break before completing the day with evening weight training. Suddenly, the boy reacted with visible shock, expressing his disbelief at the unexpected news as sweat ran down his face. At sunset, the frustrated boy confronted his stoic mentor, demanding to know why he was forced into relentless training instead of being allowed to pursue college or athletics, while the old man dismissed his plea and insisted that all would be revealed in time. Meanwhile, as the old man exercised with his dumbbells and reflected on his growing loneliness, the television announced the latest CSY News broadcast for March 6, 2039, filling the routine evening with background noise while the younger man trained with focused determination nearby. Today, Jin, the new chairman of group, was inaugurated as a stern old man with sunglasses sat solemnly in the warm light, his expression stoic and authoritative. The new chairman, Jin, recently deceased and the grandson of the late Jin Ho, is introduced as the heir to group. In the warmly lit room, Chairman Jin stood with unwavering resolve, expressing his determination to take responsibility for the group's future. As the old man glanced warily at his smartphone, tension filled the air, his cautious movements revealing just how much he had to conceal. A stern older man with white hair and tinted glasses firmly instructed someone off-panel to get changed and washed up, prompting a confused response from the other person. As the sun set over the tranquil city street, someone reflected that it had been a long time since they last ventured out, and suggested that moments of rest like this were needed. As the boy sat beside the old man driving through the night, he eagerly expressed his hope that they could make outings like this a regular occurrence, and asked if they might eat out together again next week. The old man, exuding calm resolve as he sat, affirmed the previous statement with a quiet certainty. A car's side mirror reflects several vehicles in close pursuit along the city street, hinting at a looming confrontation if another encounter should arise. Suddenly, a sleek luxury car screeches to a dramatic halt in front of the upscale store, heightening the tension of the moment. A car races urgently down the sunlit city street, its velocity leaving streaks of motion in its wake. Inside the tense car, the uneasy boy questioned the stern driver, expressing his suspicion that they were not heading in the right direction. As the empty road stretched out beneath the fading sunset, the tension mounted when someone questioned aloud why there was no response, only to suddenly realize that two cars were closely following in the mirror. As the convoy of black cars appeared in formation on the highway, someone wondered aloud in a tense, suspicious tone about their sudden presence. With a tense air hanging in the room, the man's polished shoes struck the floor as he stepped forward with unwavering determination, signaling the arrival of someone not to be ignored. Suddenly, a car skidded to a halt near the crosswalk, shattering the tense silence of the night. Shrouded in mist beneath the dim glow of the warehouse lights, a car stood with its door ajar, hinting at the tense arrival of someone unseen. At that moment, an old man in a suit arrived with quiet authority, his determined expression revealing a composed confidence that heightened the tense atmosphere. Distressed and overwhelmed by the chaos, the boy urgently turned to the older man in sunglasses, demanding to know why everything was happening and pleading for an explanation. As the old man gazed solemnly into the night, he reflected with regret that every parent carries at least one secret they cannot share with their children. Under the blue-tinged night, the boy hesitated, his anxious expression betraying his worry as he struggled to confess that he had always intended to explain the truth someday, but had never managed to find the right moment. As two men stood their ground in the darkness, confronted by a line of approaching cars and overwhelmed by apprehension, one of them admitted to his ally that he had never imagined events would unfold this way. Under the tense night sky, the old man stood resolute with his knife poised, while the younger man took a defensive stance beside him as a group of menacing figures in suits advanced, their presence heightening the confrontation. The anxious boy, his voice trembling as he glanced at the unfamiliar faces, nervously demanded to know who they were and whether they had been sent by young Chairman Jin, while the stern old man stood calmly by his side, observing the tense situation. A group of men in suits with tree-ring-patterned wooden faces confronts as a unified, ominous force, their leader exuding menace while his followers stand grim and stoic behind him. Suddenly, the boy's eye widens in stunned realization as he reacts to something deeply alarming. Reflecting on how events had unfolded more quickly than anticipated, the enigmatic man stood quietly beneath the stark light, his featureless face betraying nothing but a contemplative, ominous presence. In the tense darkness, as hostile figures encircle the old man and his wary companion, the ruthless executive menacingly asserts that with Chairman Jin Ho finally dead, the executives now demand the old man's head as proof of their loyalty. Under the ominous night sky, the masked man clenched his fist and delivered a menacing warning, insisting that those in power never forget their grudges. With a grave expression, the old man leaned forward and hinted ominously that something especially important was about to be revealed. As the quiet night envelops the building, the weight of family ties lingers in the air, casting a reflective mood over the scene. In a burst of frenzied motion, several faceless men in suits, their glowing targets marking their intent, launched a coordinated and aggressive assault, each one driven by determination and unyielding focus. Suddenly, the intense atmosphere was electrified as a voice cried out for their father, just as the stern, commanding man made a powerful entrance and filled the scene with his formidable presence. With his resolve unwavering, the old man's hand clenched the sword even, the tension in the air mounting as he prepared for what was to come. With fierce determination, the old man tightened his grip on the axe and launched a forceful attack, his intense focus clear in every movement. With fierce determination, the relentless old man brought his weapon down in a brutal blow, blood splattering violently from his strike. The old man, his gaze steely behind the fencing mask, tightened his grip on the sword as he prepared to launch into action, tension crackling in the air. With focused precision, the old man's glowing glasses gleamed as he deftly deflected the desperate knife attack, turning the tables on his aggressive assailant. Suddenly, the old man is struck with brutal force, his shock evident as blood spatters violently across the scene. A bloodied old man in a suit, his expression grim yet respectful, looked forward and acknowledged in awe that Agent 101's legendary reputation was indeed real. Astonished and overwhelmed by what he had just witnessed, the boy reacted in disbelief, thinking that it was unimaginable for someone to do that to a person with a single swing of an axe. Under the harsh, dramatic lighting, the masked man exuded contempt as he admitted that deploying their entire group just to catch a single traitor was deeply annoying, hinting at the menace to come. A commanding man, exuding confidence as he led his men into a menacing confrontation, remarked that the situation justified all the trouble they had gone through. Furious and unstoppable, the old man unleashed a brutal counterattack as he demanded to know if his attackers truly thought they could capture him. Suddenly, the man's face morphs into a menacing target, the glaring zero at its center casting an ominous shadow over the scene. After effortlessly crushing his opponent and leaving blood splattered across the scene, the confident man scoffed at the meager number of attackers, questioning whether such a small group could possibly pose a threat to him. With fury in his eyes, the menacing older man gripped his bloodied weapon and confronted his adversaries, warning them that he would demonstrate the vast difference in power between them and referring to them with contempt. Under the shroud of night, the silent building looms ominously against the dark sky, its emptiness hinting at the tension that lingers within. In a sudden explosion of violence, 3 men with tree-ring faces are brutally attacked. Blood sprays from their wounds as one is struck down in shock. Another recoils in terror, and the third panics, desperately trying to defend himself or escape. Suddenly, the old man, caught completely off guard, is struck with a brutal blow, his shocked gasp lost amid the spray of blood and violent motion. A man in kendo gear, his expression determined, blocked a fierce downward sword strike with unwavering focus. In a burst of violence, the old man drove his knife into his opponent, who gasped in shock at the sudden, decisive attack. Suddenly, the fierce old man, eyes hidden behind sunglasses, launched a brutal assault with his bloodied axe, forcing the shocked, suited men to desperately defend themselves against his relentless determination. Amid the intense atmosphere, the old man, wounded but resolute, steels himself for combat as he grips his bloodied weapon with unwavering determination. In a blur of ruthless precision, the old man unleashed a devastating sword attack that left his terrified and panicked opponents defeated and bloodied, the intensity of his skill overwhelming the entire scene. With blood spattered around him, the old man leaned forward, his glowing glasses and furious glare making it clear he was preparing for a fierce confrontation. Amidst a sea of fallen bodies and splattered blood, the battle-hardened old man stood resolute beside his calm yet formidable companion, both bracing themselves against the threatening crowd that now encircled them with weapons drawn. As the man lunged forward with his axe, the startled boy, caught off guard, began to demand clarification about the secret just mentioned, his voice trembling with shock. As the old man urgently dug into the ground with determination, he called out to Jin-ai, insisting that explanations would have to wait and they needed to act immediately, leaving the surprised boy no choice but to react swiftly to his command. As the tense night pressed in around him, the anxious boy struggled to control his thoughts, telling himself not to think about anything while sweat beaded on his brow. Seizing the moment, the old man urgently ordered the boy to escape and led the way, while the boy stood frozen in shock behind him. The blue-haired boy, startled and anxious, reacted in disbelief as the old man dashed past him with sudden, determined speed. Two kendo fighters clashed with unwavering determination, while the old man observed every movement with a mentor's sharp focus, and the young boy watched the dramatic duel, his excitement barely contained. In a sudden burst of violence, two faceless men in suits launched a coordinated assault, their faces set in grim determination as they swung blunt weapons with hostile precision at an unseen foe. In a blur of ruthless skill, the old man cut down both attackers with swift, blood-spattering sword strikes, his determination starkly contrasted by their shock and helplessness. Amidst a scene littered with bloodied, motionless men, the terrified boy screamed in panic as he fled desperately from the carnage. As the masked assailant lunges forward with his weapon, the boy meets the threat head-on, his eyes brimming with unwavering resolve. Suddenly, the boy reeled back in pain, his strained expression revealing his shock as he groaned in response to the unexpected blow. In a blur of motion, one man fiercely overpowers his shocked opponent just as a sword slices through the air above them, heightening the intensity of the confrontation. A frightened boy sprinted desperately out of the warehouse, fleeing from a determined group of armed men who relentlessly pursued him. A worried young man urgently yelled for Jin-ai to get inside and take cover, driven by a protective instinct as tension filled the air. Inside the dim storage room, the bloodied older man urgently commanded everyone to hurry, his voice sharp with desperation as he clutched his weapon. With fierce determination blazing in his eyes, the old man unleashed a devastating, energy-charged kick that shattered the air with its intensity. Suddenly, a group of men in suits surged forward, their faces hidden behind eerie circular masks as they brandished metal batons with hostile intent. Amid swirling smoke, the anxious boy braced himself defensively, his voice trembling as he wondered if the ordeal had finally ended. Stunned, the lone boy stumbled upon the grim aftermath of a massacre, his shock palpable as he took in the sight of bodies strewn across the barricade in the dimly lit building. In the dimly lit room, the boy, sweating and visibly nervous, reacts with anxious worry as he glances tensely toward something alarming just out of sight. With a commanding tone, the old man addressed the stunned boy as his son, leaving the young man reeling in shock at the unexpected revelation. In a tense reunion, the anxious young man, his voice trembling with emotion, urgently asked his father if he was hurt, while the older man, equally concerned, checked on his son's condition. In the tense nighttime atmosphere, the anxious boy tried to assure the older man that he was fine, while the older man, maintaining a calm but commanding presence, insisted they move quickly since he believed their pursuers would soon be on their trail. In the tense, dimly lit room, the old man seriously pointed toward the closed door across the space, instructing that if they exited through it, they would find a car waiting at the bottom of the stairs. In the dimly lit industrial setting, the commanding old man urgently instructed his worried companion to activate the self-driving vehicle and leave it on standby, assuring him that he would buy them time and follow shortly after. Under the harsh indoor lighting, the anxious boy, his face slick with sweat, nervously protested in a trembling voice as he tried to voice his objection. In the dimly lit room, the old man with a stern expression assertively instructed someone to proceed. With fierce determination etched on his face, the relentless old man in the suit leveled his shotgun and unleashed a powerful blast toward his unseen foe. Glaring fiercely, the young man gripped the older man's shoulder and accused him of being nothing more than an old rat, his anger simmering beneath the tense confrontation. At night, the dominant leader of the menacing group confronted the protagonist with a sword, threateningly declaring that he had intended to demonstrate some senior courtesy rather than resort to cheap tricks. With a malicious glint in his eye, the sinister old man raised his sword and coldly declared that he had changed his mind and would now kill his opponent in the most agonizing way possible. Sensing imminent danger, the old man urgently commanded the younger man to run, prompting them both to sprint away in a state of panic. With an air of unwavering dominance, the old man intercepted the attacker's gun and crushed its barrel effortlessly in his bare hand, leaving the would-be shooter stunned. Suddenly, the old man, a veteran now under dire threat, reacted in pain as he was struck by a sword at close range, audibly expressing his agony. Suddenly, a mysterious figure with a target for a face lunges forward, swinging an axe down with fierce determination as the older man in sunglasses reels back in shock, caught completely off guard by the ambush. With unwavering focus, the old man expertly wielded his sword, swiftly cutting down the two desperate attackers as shock spread across their faces. With fierce determination blazing in his eyes, the old man smashed through the barrier, scattering shards in every direction as the intensity of the moment surged. A close-up reveals the old man's wary expression as he narrows his eyes and scrutinizes something off-panel, sweat beading on his tense face behind tinted glasses. Standing alone in the darkness, the boy admitted that he was confused, uncertainty clouding his expression as he clutched his arm. As panic surged through him, the boy mentally struggled in the tense moment, feeling overwhelmed and frightened as his mind went blank. Facing the imposing locked door, the anxious boy wondered if he and his father could truly survive even if they managed to escape. The distressed boy, overwhelmed and trying to push through, reacted in shock and frustration as he realized his mind had gone completely blank. In the dimly lit room, the boy, his face slick with sweat and anxiety, urged himself to focus solely on surviving as he tried to regain control over his spiraling thoughts. With tense anticipation, the man anxiously gripped the door handle and slowly began to open the door. With desperation etched on his face, the injured man extended his blood-stained hand toward the locked door, determination burning in his eyes despite the tense atmosphere. Haunted by distressing memories, the boy desperately tried to suppress his thoughts, but the image of his father swinging an axe and people being cut into pieces overwhelmed him with fear and guilt. Shocked to his core, the boy questioned how it could be possible that someone he had trusted all his life might actually be a murderer or a criminal, his horror and disbelief clear in his trembling voice and wide, fearful eyes. Suddenly, the man was caught off guard as he was struck from behind, reacting with a pained gasp of shock. As the old man entered the dark room with an air of authority, the boy, wide-eyed and stunned, could only react in disbelief, unable to comprehend the intimidating presence now before him. Gasping and coughing, the old man, wounded yet resilient, fought to remain conscious as he clutched his bloodied knives, desperation etched across his face. In a violent burst of motion, the determined man unleashed a lethal attack that caught the old man off guard, leaving him fatally wounded and shocked. Amidst the shocking aftermath, the terrified boy stared wide-eyed at the older man, who remained eerily unfazed while blood splattered the scene around them. In an ominous and blood-stained scene, a menacing enforcer grips a bloodied sword while his cold, stoic companion stands behind him, looming over a defeated old man who kneels and bleeds on the ground before his attackers. In a sudden burst of panic, the terrified boy cried out desperately for his father, his voice trembling with fear. In the dimly lit room, the calculating man with the distinctive mask faced away, as he revealed with a triumphant air that every evacuation route, Crucial infrastructure and contact prepared for this moment had already been identified and destroyed. In the somber room, the authoritative old man stood alone before the dimly lit map, his determined gaze hinting at deep contemplation as he reflected in solitude. Desperately wounded and with tears streaming down her face, the woman pleaded that at the very least, their child should be given the chance to live the life they truly desired. With a dismissive air, the stern old man confidently declared that any resistance was utterly meaningless. With unwavering determination, the boy explained that while it might appear otherwise, he was simply fulfilling the final promise he had made. With unwavering resolve, the old man explained that his sense of duty had compelled him to hold on until the very end. Reflecting deeply, the old man clung to the hope that he could give his son a different life. With blood staining his suit and pain etched across his face, the injured man admitted in a resigned tone that he could no longer keep his promise. With a blood-stained hand gripping the lighter, the man stated with grim resolve that he would have to take his companion with him, the ominous atmosphere thickening as he prepared to ignite something. In the dimly lit warehouse, the bloodied old man knelt and with unwavering resolve lit a flame as he commanded those present to dig his grave and join him in putting an end to everything. A thick haze billows from the scattered smoke grenades, cloaking the area in tense uncertainty. Enraged, the masked man in kendo gear launched into a furious assault, shouting obscenities as he raised his sword to strike. A visibly startled boy, standing in the shadows with sweat on his face, called out anxiously for ISU as alarm gripped him. Suddenly, the old man, his eyes reflecting deep sorrow, turned back and expressed with a heavy heart that he was sorry he could not protect them until the end. As the lighter produces a sharp click, a sudden blaze erupts, filling the scene with intense, crackling flames. Amidst a flurry of glowing embers, the young man stood frozen in shock, sweat beading down his face as he struggled to process the sudden, overwhelming event. Suddenly, chaos erupts as a massive explosion engulfs the building in fire, shattering the calm of the scene. As the two men stood silhouetted against the sparkling city lights in their dim office, one of them, still reeling from shock, remarked to his serious companion that the explosion had proven just how unhinged their adversary truly was. A cold, inquisitive man stood beneath the stark lighting, his suspicion evident as he questioned whether someone had attempted to die alongside his own son. In the dim light, the shrewd man analyzed the situation seriously, deducing that the criminal was no ordinary person and likely intended to fake an accident in order to smuggle out only his son. In the dimly lit room, the stern, bald man commanded his blue-haired subordinate to search every hospital thoroughly, emphasizing that apprehending their target would not be as simple as catching him outright, while his subordinate stood by, visibly concerned. In the ominous, shadow-filled room, the mysterious man regarded the boy with a calculating gaze, silently deciding that it was time to see just how much the child resembled his father. Standing respectfully before the authoritative figure in the shadowy office, the obedient subordinate acknowledged the instructions he had just received, his demeanor marked by tense submission. As flames engulfed the abandoned factory, a composed reporter gravely relays that an unexplained explosion occurred there last night, and that firefighters are still battling to bring the blaze under control. The somber mood deepens as a news reporter gravely details that 32 casualties have been confirmed from an unexplained fire in an abandoned factory, while someone off-screen anxiously inquires if another person has regained consciousness. A nurse, standing beside the hospital bed and holding an IV line, matter-of-factly informed the two detectives that she had already explained the patient's condition, assuring them that his health was stable even though he remained unconscious. The boy remains unconscious in his hospital bed, and with his mild concussion symptoms, it will be some time before he regains stability for any interrogation. In the dimly lit room, as tension filled the air, the anxious woman requested that they be contacted as soon as he regained consciousness, while the two men listened with worried and serious expressions. With calm professionalism, the nurse firmly informed the visitor that the patient needed rest and gently escorted him from the hospital room, while the tired patient remained quietly in bed. Lying awake in bed, the boy stared upward with a troubled expression as he anxiously wondered to himself about the confusing events of the previous night. Lying beneath the stark hospital ceiling, the boy wondered in confusion why his father's true identity remained such a mystery to him. Lying in bed with a troubled gaze, the boy reflected on how bewildering everything seemed to him. A woman, hands on her hips and voice laced with accusation, confronted the boy lying in the hospital bed, revealing that she knew he had only been pretending to sleep, which left him visibly surprised. The boy, startled and uneasy, was caught pretending to sleep, leading him to react with surprise when someone remarked that his act was as obvious as it was in his childhood. At that moment, someone off-panel called out in surprise upon recognizing so, prompting the woman to smile warmly in response. As the young man sat up in his hospital bed, he pensively tried to calculate how many years he had lost, recalling aloud that it must have been about 12, while the concerned woman beside him listened in silence. With a gentle smile, the woman reminisced about how she once dreamed of becoming a traffic cop and shared her own surprise at eventually becoming a detective, explaining that her career had actually begun in traffic. While subduing a group of troublemakers, the determined woman recounted that this decisive action was what first drew the attention of her current captain. Laughing as she playfully grabbed his head, the confident girl teased the boy by recalling how they used to practice taekwondo together as kids, and how getting kicked during sparring had always hurt, leaving him feeling sheepish and embarrassed. Seated gently in the hospital bed, the boy reflected with a nostalgic smile that, despite everything, he truly enjoyed the experience. In the tense, silent room, the anxious boy avoided eye contact while the worried woman watched him quietly, the air thick with unspoken tension. Sitting upright in his hospital bed with a look of confusion on his face, the boy admitted to the concerned woman beside him that he truly did not know the answer, his uncertainty hanging heavily in the air. A worried boy, his voice trembling, confided to the somber woman that aside from knowing he and his father had been attacked by masked men, he had no idea who the assailants were or what their motives could be, leaving both of them enveloped in tense uncertainty. Uneasily, the man lying in the hospital bed admitted to the woman beside him that he couldn't offer much information to the detective and apologized, leaving her confused by his guarded response. A protective woman, visibly worried and frustrated, confronted the other person by insisting she was not trying to interrogate them, expressing her deep concern and questioning what they could have possibly done wrong. Standing beside the boy's bed with a tone of concern, the woman reassured him that questioning would wait until he recovered and promised to visit daily, urging him to let her know if he needed anything. A woman, her eyes brimming with tears, pleaded desperately that she would do anything to help, only to be suddenly overtaken by shock. A man in a tracksuit, visibly astonished, burst into the room and exclaimed in disbelief that the boy was already awake, startling the recently awakened boy who turned toward him in confusion. As the sun sets gently behind the trees, the calm facade of the hospital building comes into view, introducing a sense of quiet anticipation. A close-up reveals someone carrying a plastic bag filled with a box of fried chicken and side dishes, setting an ordinary yet comforting tone. A weary woman, slumped at her desk in front of a glowing computer monitor, quietly announced that she had come for a visit and, with fatigue evident in her voice, repeatedly reflected on finally finishing work. At the reception desk, the professional receptionist acknowledged the woman's arrival and informed her that she could proceed directly for her visit, while another staff member observed the interaction attentively. With a gentle smile and a faint blush, the empathetic woman warmly remarked that she noticed the other's frequent visits and was touched that she was now recognized so quickly. A woman with short red hair and a mask stood pensively, questioning whether she was overstepping by getting involved since she and the other person were merely acquaintances. As the anxious boy entered the room, he nervously wondered aloud if others found his appearance unusual and admitted that he couldn't help but worry, while the nurse quietly observed him from the background. With a burst of excitement, an unknown figure eagerly offered a box of chicken, their outstretched hand framed by a bright, festive backdrop. The boy, delight shining in his eyes as he eagerly enjoyed the special food, remarked that it felt so sacred he could barely see the woman who had brought it, while she watched him fondly from nearby. With a cheerful grin, the boy affectionately assured his older sister that she meant more to him than even his beloved fried chicken, expressing his fondness as he enjoyed his meal. Smiling warmly, the woman fondly remarked to Jin-ai that his love for food reminded her of his childhood, leaving the boy visibly touched by her affectionate words. A woman, her expression clouded with worry, silently questioned whether the cheerful demeanor she observed was merely a facade for her benefit. Sitting alone in the quiet room, the boy reflected with worry on how difficult life had become for everyone since the uncle's absence. While eating fried chicken in his hospital bed, the boy, overwhelmed and confused by recent events, admitted that he neither understood nor wished to understand the situation, as the woman sat nearby and listened with patient silence. As a group of men in eerie, spiraled masks advanced menacingly, someone wondered anxiously if these masked figures were pursuing them. Determined to shield So from harm, the boy resolved that, above all else, he must ensure she would not become involved, his conviction clear as he faced the woman's anxious gaze. A nurse entered the hospital room and calmly informed the patient that it was time for his IV, causing the man holding his food to look up in mild surprise, while his companion watched with quiet concern. A nurse entered the calm hospital room and informed the man that it was time for his IV, catching him by surprise as he paused mid-bite, while his concerned companion watched quietly. A hopeful boy, recovering in his hospital bed, looked up at the attentive woman by his side and asked if it was true that he no longer needed IVs. Caught off guard, the wary man looked up at the masked woman and questioned in a hesitant tone whether she was the nurse. A woman glared with furious intensity, her red eyes burning above a bandaged mouth as she unleashed a chilling wave of killer intent. In that moment, the boy's eyes widened, as he silently processed a sudden, stunning revelation that left him visibly shaken. With wild eyes and a manic cry, the deranged woman lunged forward, thrusting her scalpel in a frenzied attack. Suddenly, the boy reacted forcefully to a startling event, his shocked expression and intense energy radiating as he shouted in surprise. With fury blazing in her eyes, the enraged woman lunged forward and screamed that her opponent should die, unleashing a violent attack in a frenzied outburst. Suddenly, an aggressive woman lunged toward another, whose startled reaction revealed her shock and defensiveness in the face of the unexpected attack. A shocked woman confronted the other person, demanding to know what they were and accusing them of being out of their mind. Suddenly, a powerful explosion erupts at the center of the scene, sending the man reeling in shock as he is struck by the overwhelming force. Suddenly, the boy cried out in panic, desperately calling for his sister as worry overwhelmed his expression. Suddenly, the masked woman's eyes widened in shock as she was startled by the intense turn of events. Suddenly, the woman, her eyes blazing with shock, seized someone by the collar and exclaimed in disbelief that she had just realized something extraordinary. In a surge of fury, the dark-haired man forcefully slammed his shocked opponent to the ground, his aggression dominating the violent moment. Alarmed and struggling to catch her breath, the woman reacted to the older man's shocking behavior, internally questioning whether he might be unhinged. In the dimly lit hallway, the anxious girl desperately pleaded with her older sister to stop, her voice trembling with worry and urgency. Inside the cramped room, the boy desperately grabbed the woman's arm and urgently warned her that they needed to escape immediately, his fear evident as she stared back in startled surprise. As the determined boy sprinted down the stairs, the worried woman chased after him and demanded to know what he was doing. With determination etched on her face, the woman chased after the fleeing figure, urgently demanding to know why they were running away and insisting that, as a detective, she deserved the truth. With urgency in his voice and stress etched across his face, the boy insisted that explanations would come later and demanded that the other person follow him immediately. The anxious boy, beads of sweat on his brow, realized the situation was so dire that even a detective would be powerless to help. As the old man was violently ambushed from behind, he realized with alarm that if these attackers were involved, it was actually his older sister who was in grave danger. A tense young man, sensing imminent danger as a shadowy figure appeared in the doorway behind him, urgently warned his older sister to act immediately. Suddenly, as the shadowy figure ambushed him from behind, the boy cried out in pain and shock, completely unprepared for the menacing attack. The man grimaced in agony as he struggled against the overwhelming force, letting out a pained exclamation while energy crackled violently around him. A girl, her voice trembling with panic, urgently called out to Ai, her desperation clear as she tried to warn or reach someone important. Suddenly, a determined attacker lunged at the shocked woman with a raised fist, forcing her to brace herself defensively as tension filled the air. Reacting under pressure, the anxious boy cried out in distress despite trying to appear confident. As the red-haired woman pinned him to the ground on the staircase and menacingly brandished her knife, the desperate man cried out for his older sister and groaned in pain, his fear rising with each passing second. A large, intimidating man approached his unseen target with smug disdain, remarking that he found it ridiculous to be sent after just one insignificant child. Frustrated and sweating, the boy questioned the validity of the orders he had received, his anger quickly giving way to a confused sense of disbelief. A sinister-looking man commanded his sneaky subordinate to report back, while the eager informant replied excitedly and remarked that those two seemed inseparable. With a deranged glint in his red eyes, the unhinged man clenched his fist, and eyeing the pair, sneered that it was adorable to see the boy and girl together, before voicing his twisted intent to kill the girl because of her beauty. In a sudden display of aggression, the man seized the boy's head with a forceful grip, leaving the boy looking startled and completely overpowered. In a sudden burst of fury, the enraged boy delivered a brutal punch to the man's head, leaving his opponent visibly overwhelmed by the violent impact. A furious boy, his protective instincts ignited, charged forward to confront the aggressor and demanded with anger that he release her immediately. As the furious man delivered a brutal stomp to his opponent's face, the overpowered boy cried out in pain, making his helplessness clear. A furious boy, his eyes glowing with rage, shouted in defiance at his aggressor, demanding that he be released and making it clear he would not submit. Suddenly, a hostile man seized the boy from behind, gripping his neck and leaving him shocked and defenseless. In a surge of fury, the aggressive man seized the struggling boy by the neck, and his voice trembling with anger, accused him of forcing his hand despite having held back until now, while the boy gasped in pain. A terrified boy screamed in agony as a hand tightened around his throat, his desperation echoing through the tense moment. Suddenly, as the man in the suit remained unaware, a bolt of energy struck him from behind, leaving him shocked and defenseless. With a guttural growl rumbling from his throat, the old man, now towering and menacing, began to transform before the terrified boy and the stunned woman, casting a chilling shadow over the tense alleyway. Consumed by fury, the man's eyes blaze as he clenches his teeth, his face shrouded in shadows while anger courses through him. With a surge of unrestrained intensity, the man launched a glowing, devastating punch at the woman, who braced herself with unwavering determination against the incoming attack. A woman, suddenly overwhelmed and terrified, stared ahead in utter shock as she witnessed something horrifying. Suddenly, a bald man in a suit is struck on the head by a red fire extinguisher, his expression frozen in shock as the violent impact reverberates through the scene. Suddenly, the old man erupted with a startled, angry outburst as he reacted to something unexpected off-panel. Towering over the terrified old man sprawled helplessly on the floor, the aggressive man asserted his dominance while the woman stood by with a smug expression, both exuding a menacing sense of triumph over their fallen opponent. Breathing heavily and clearly distressed, the boy anxiously demanded an explanation from Jin Ai about the sudden appearance of so many people, his worry evident as he tried to make sense of the chaotic scene. A worried, protective woman confronted the anxious boy, demanding to know if someone had come after him and what kind of trouble he had gotten himself into. Overwhelmed and gasping for breath, the frightened boy anxiously demanded an explanation from Jin Ai about the presence of so many people. A concerned woman, her tone urgent, interrogated the anxious boy by demanding to know if people had come targeting him and what kind of dangerous mess he had become involved in. A distressed woman, her voice trembling with anxiety, urgently warned someone to leave, only to react with shock and alarm an instant later. Haunted by painful memories, The boy confessed in a distressed tone that dozens of men like the one before them had once chased his family and killed his father. As the aggressive man pressed the anxious boy's head down, the boy, his voice trembling with worry, admitted that he didn't want to endanger as well. In a heated confrontation, the irritated woman forcefully grabbed the boy's head and scolded him, demanding to know how he dared to order her around and firmly asserting that she, not he, was the detective. With unwavering determination, the woman confronted the police officer and demanded to know if she was expected to simply ignore the troubling situation before her, questioning whether that was truly the duty of someone in law enforcement. Despite his visible anxiety, the boy reassured the other person that handling the situation was his responsibility and questioned whether now was really the time for them to be concerned about him, even as uncertainty lingered in his expression. In a dimly lit room, the confident woman smiled while holding her phone and reassured the other person that she would arrange for personal protection. The girl, exasperated, chastised the boy by insisting that despite everything, he still didn't understand, while the boy reacted with a sigh, clearly flustered by her passionate scolding. As dusk settles over the hospital building, a quiet resolve fills the air. Under the cover of night, a purposeful man led the way up the staircase, while a cautious woman followed close behind, both approaching the quiet building with tense anticipation. Beneath the vast, star-studded sky, a cautious man led his wary companion through the creaking gate, both moving with quiet anticipation into the unknown night. A young woman looked around the familiar house with a nostalgic smile, remarking to herself that it had been quite some time since she last visited. With a friendly smile, the boy welcomed the woman by recalling that she had not visited since she graduated, while she listened quietly from outside the door, lost in her own bittersweet reflections. As the woman assured the man that she would pack quickly and return, he patiently encouraged her to take her time, their calm anticipation filling the room. Sitting alone in the dimly lit room, the anxious woman called out for ISU, her voice betraying a mix of worry and longing. In the dimly lit home, the woman instructed the man with determined urgency to wait while she quickly packed in the room, and the man calmly assured her that she could take her time. Suddenly, as the anxious silence lingered in the dimly lit room, a girl's voice called out the name I, causing the alert woman at the table to turn in startled surprise. The ominous gathering of faceless men in suits, shrouded in darkness, suggested a calculated mass intent, as the narrator questioned what could embolden dozens of people to openly commit such violence together. A woman, her brow furrowed with worry, carefully analyzed the situation and concluded that their adversaries were likely part of a sophisticated corporate organization, rather than ordinary gangsters. In the faded memory, I's father stands proudly behind the two beaming children in their martial arts uniforms, capturing a moment of warmth and familial pride. Since childhood, he had displayed an unusual obsession with training I, a fact the woman now reflected on with a worried and thoughtful gaze. He had always tried to keep most people away from I, leaving the young woman to reflect worriedly on his reasons in the dimly lit room. Late at night, a worried woman hastily answered the phone, anxiously calling out to her senior as she struggled to hide her tension. A woman, visibly alarmed and sweating, received a shocking phone call informing her that the suspect they had handed over earlier had suddenly disappeared. A panicked man, standing near a police car with flashing lights, frantically explained over the phone that during the brief moment he went to the bathroom, his assistant had been knocked out and everyone else had vanished, while the injured assistant sat nearby in a daze. A tense confrontation begins as the alert woman, clutching her phone, faces four intimidating men who enter the room with menacing intent. Suddenly, the woman, her anxiety evident, received alarming news over the phone and urgently questioned how they had been tracked down so quickly, demanding an explanation from her senior. As a sudden attack slashed dangerously close to her face, the terrified woman urgently called out to Jun, demanding that he request backup immediately. A woman in a suit, startled by the sudden threat, recoiled in shock as a knife was stabbed into a phone on the table, realizing from the ominous gesture that the situation had taken a dangerous turn. A masked woman with glowing eyes confronted her target at night, her voice cold and intimidating as she insisted that their sister must only associate with them, emphasizing that she had much unfinished business with her. Suddenly, an alarmed boy burst into the room, urgently interrupting as he called out to his older sister in distress. Late at night, the intimidating old man leaned forward with a threatening glare, initiating a confrontation as he called out sharply to the woman nearby. Noticing an unexpected threat, the worried boy looked ahead with alarm and expressed his shock at how more of them had managed to arrive. A confident man, his amusement clear as he smirked under the night sky, confronted someone about their defeat by mockingly asking how they could have been beaten by such a little brat. In a dimly lit room, the young man, his face tense and slick with sweat, scornfully mocked another for lacking enhancements and blamed their lowly rank on this supposed deficiency. A man, visibly agitated and sweating, voiced his frustration as he struggled to contain his anger. A desperate young man, his frustration boiling over, demanded to know why this was happening to him and pleaded angrily for an explanation. In the midst of swirling fragments, the determined boy fixed his gaze forward, bracing himself against the sudden threat as torn paper or money hurtled dramatically past him. In the eerie silence, the masked man's eyes glowed with a menacing light as he revealed his dangerous intent, sending a wave of ominous energy through the air. In a sudden flash of motion, a masked attacker lunged forward with a knife, his rage evident, but was abruptly stopped as another man, acting with fierce determination, intercepted his wrist and halted the deadly strike. Suddenly, the masked woman, her eyes glowing with fierce determination, launched herself at the startled man, catching him completely off guard with her aggressive ambush. Suddenly, the furious woman lunged forward and stabbed the man in the side with a knife, leaving him shocked and crying out in pain. Reacting to a sudden surge of pain, the boy grimaced with anguish, clutching his bleeding cheek as he let out a stifled cry. Without warning, the masked woman, her eyes glowing with frenzy, lunges forward and drives her knife into the young man's neck, leaving him frozen in utter shock. As the woman drove her knee forcefully into his torso, the man cried out in shock and pain, overwhelmed by the sudden, intense attack. Crying out in distress, the boy's voice broke through the silence as his face contorted with desperation and pain. As the boy launched a fierce attack, the frightened girl, desperately clutching a knife, exclaimed in panic that she could not handle the situation and pleaded for guidance on what to do. A stern man, resolute in his decision, refused to teach knife fighting to the frustrated boy, firmly explaining that he would not allow any bladed weapon training despite the boy's pleading demands for a reason. Suddenly, the masked attacker lunged forward with fierce intensity, delivering a crushing punch to his adversary's midsection, and leaving the man visibly shocked by the unexpected blow. Suddenly, as the fierce masked woman launched a surprise attack, the shocked man cried out in pain, completely caught off guard by her assault. Overwhelmed by agony, the boy let out a guttural scream, his face twisted in anguish as he cried out in pain. With a cruel grin, the man grabbed the frightened girl and let out a mocking laugh, clearly reveling in his intimidation as she struggled in his grasp. Suddenly, the girl is caught off guard as she suffers a shocking injury, blood spurting from her wound while she reels in disbelief. Suddenly, the masked woman recoiled in shock, reacting to the unexpected pain in her shoulder as she cried out in disbelief. With unwavering resolve, the determined woman leveled her gun at the intruders and warned them that this was the end of the line for all of them. In a tense standoff, the assertive woman, her weapon drawn and voice unwavering, ordered everyone present to put down their weapons and raise their hands, demanding immediate compliance as her determined partner stood ready beside her. A desperate and forceful woman, her eyes fierce, leveled her gun and threatened that dire consequences would follow if her demands were not met. As the girl collapsed in agony, the frightened boy cried out desperately for his older sister, reaching toward her in panic. In the moonlit night, the menacing man with glowing eyes threatened the woman by holding a gun and warned her in a cold, controlled tone that if they had intended to kill her, they would have already used their weapons. In the dimly lit room, a menacing presence assured the distressed woman that they did not intend to kill her yet, especially since the police were not involved, leaving her clutching her bleeding hand in fear. A large, menacing man confronted the anxious boy, making it clear in an intimidating tone that their business was solely with him, while in the background, a masked woman focused on restraining another person. Desperately clenching his fist, the boy confronted the other person and demanded to know the reason behind their actions. With intense anger in his eyes, the bald man demanded to know the reason behind what had just occurred. With a sudden burst of aggression, the bald man hurled a devastating punch at the unsuspecting boy, overwhelming him with both speed and force. In a dimly lit room, the distressed boy cried out in anguish, venting his frustration as he accused someone of being fundamentally flawed while gasping for breath. With fists clenched and his face contorted in anger, the old man confronted his opponent and taunted him with contempt, insisting that he could never understand and was nothing more than a plaything for those in power. In a violent outburst, the enraged man attacked the shocked boy, shouting that the boy should blame his parents for what was happening. The boy, struggling to stay upright as agony him, uttered a pained gasp while clutching his bloodied side under the harsh light. A boy with blue-black hair looked downward, overwhelmed and uncertain, as he admitted that he couldn't understand anything. As the boy clenched his fist with determination, he wondered if all the time he had spent with his father had been leading up to this very moment, while the stern man watched over him with silent pride. In a shadowy light, the old man looked back over his shoulder and questioned in a disappointed tone how anyone could choose to leave so irresponsibly. Suddenly, an imposing figure slams their boot forcefully onto the ground, crackling with determined energy and signaling the start of a powerful move. Although uncertainty clouded his path, the boy steeled his resolve, feeling certain of at least one thing as determination radiated from his gaze. Summoning every ounce of his determination, the boy clenched his fist and resolved inwardly that he could not allow himself to die here, his desperation fueling a fierce defiance against the odds. Suddenly, a wave of terror washed over the man as he recoiled in horror, overwhelmed by a dreadful thought that seized his mind. The man, his jaw clenched in a dramatic close-up, reflected regretfully on how things might have changed if only he had fought back with such determination in the past. Fueled by intense determination, the young man attacked with a decisive punch, internally regretting that he had not realized sooner how crucial it was to fight back. With terror etched in his eyes as chaos erupted around him, the man urged himself desperately to run, realizing the danger closing in. A young man stands ominously over his bloodied, defeated opponent, his cold resolve radiating as he intimidates the helpless man lying at his feet. A tormented boy, overwhelmed by guilt and grief, questioned in anguish whether his father might still be alive if things had been different.